Hello and welcome back to Mark My Words Football Podcast with Rob.
And Scott.
And here we stand at the precipice of the playoffs as finally we have crossed the bridge from the regular season into the postseason, and now only 14 teams remain. The Chiefs and the Lions got their well-deserved byes after a dominant regular season, but for their other 12 teams, they'll have to dog it out in the wild card round. We got some great matchups here. Divisional foes clashing for the third time this season. Elite QBs going head-to-head, and great defenses clashing off in what should be a very eventful wild card weekend. But before we get to all of that, we will start, as is our custom, with the Buffalo Bills and their loss in Week 18 to the New England Patriots by a score of 23-16. Josh Allen did get the start in this one, but only really played that one play just to get his streak going. So, Scott, what were your thoughts from this game and the Bills' backups playing the Patriots?
Yeah, Josh Allen and his one handoff was probably the most eventful thing happening in this game, other than maybe James Cook hitting his 1,000-yard mark. Not a whole lot to take away in this game. And to be honest, I had the game on, but I didn't pay too much attention. I was kind of going throughout my day because, what does this game matter? I kind of want the Patriots to win so they don't get the first overall pick,
Yep. Yeah, and the Patriots winning that and then immediately firing Gerard Mayo is just kind of the perfect statement of what this Patriots team has been ever since Brady has left. Just really not really knowing what they want to be, trying to go for it, getting Mac Jones and getting to the playoffs, but just kind of drifting around with Cam Newton, just drifting in the mediocre spot, not really being able to get low enough to get the elite draft picks, and just kind of just fluctuating and just floating out there in the ether, not really, knowing where they want to go. So, yeah, it was a win for the Patriots, but it was really a loss for the Patriots. And, I guess that's really all that needs to be said about this game.
Yeah, and ain't much else.
Yeah.
The Bills stayed healthy. They avoided injuries like some of the other teams were unable to do. So,
yep.
Yeah, that's about all I could have asked for.
Yeah, I think it was a good decision by McDermott to sit all his starters. If this was a Dan Campbell, he would probably have played them all just because that's who he is. But, I think it was a good decision. Sit them, get rested, and now prepare for a game against Denver. Good choice. And like you said about the injuries, we saw some teams get some key injuries, none more noteworthy to me than the Green Bay Packers, who saw Jordan Love and Christian Watson go down in their 24-22 loss against the Chicago Bears. And, man, what were your thoughts from this matchup?
Yeah, I think first of all, step in on Jordan Love. I think that was not as serious as it could have been. Maybe because they did pan to, on the sidelines, Jordan Love warming up in the second half when it looked like the Commanders could lose. So, obviously being the scenario that Packers could only move up in the seeding if the Commanders lost. And when they realized that the Panthers were going to win, Love stayed on the bench. So I think if this were a playoff game, he would have stayed in. So I don't have a ton of concern for that injury. It may affect him a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be anything that's too crazy effective next week.
I hope you're right. Love, I do think he will play next week. Right now, he's probable, and they said hopeful was the exact wording that most reports are using. But he's a really tough player. We've seen him play through injuries this year with MCL. So, yeah, he's definitely going to be out there. I would be truly shocked if he doesn't go out there and play. It's a matter of how is he going to look? Is that going to be really impactful on his throwing motion with that arm? With Christian Watson, you hate to see it, but we've seen this Packers team, go out there without him before. They're really, they're very team-oriented. They don't have that number one receiver that they depend so much upon. So, obviously I would love to have Watson out there, but not having him isn't like the end of the world. In this game, I can't really fault Matt LaFleur for playing the starters. Like you said, they had seeding to play for potentially if the Commanders lost. And plus, you didn't want to go out into the playoffs on that terrible loss against the Vikings where you just got completely dominated. I think Matt LaFleur, before the game, he said in response to the question from the reporters on, playing the starters now, he said, I think there's value to going out there and playing well. And I was like, yeah, I completely agree with that. I think going into the playoffs, smashing your division rivals, the Bears, would really help you go in with a more positive attitude. But unfortunately, it ends up not being that way at all as you lose two of your key players and lose to your division rivals.
Yeah, it really couldn't have gone much worse for the Packers on this day, which is just really unfortunate for them. the team that I thought had a lot of momentum in the last couple of months that seems to have it come to a crashing halt right exactly at the wrong time.
Yeah, completely. It's unfortunate. Jordan Love, I would love to have seen him stay undefeated against the Bears, but 3-1 against Chicago still isn't too bad of a start in his career. Hopefully he can rebound. And even though the Packers lost this game, they still almost won. I mean, they had 2 fumbles lost to the Bears, 2 turnovers, and they still ruled the time of possession. They had almost double the Bears' total yards. They had more first downs, more total plays, more less punts than the Bears, with only 3, and the Bears had 6. So still, largely outplayed Chicago in this game, but just weren't able to seal it up. Hopefully that play, on the defensive side of the ball and getting your offensive players some play. And Josh Jacobs also getting some rest, only had 6 carries in this game. So maybe it isn't as bad as, I initially had thought. Like when I saw this game and its result, I was like, man, this is a disaster. Maybe not completely a disaster, but going into Philly, as we're going to talk about soon, that's kind of a tough draw.
Yep.
All right, and from there, we're going to go into Scott's Clown of the Week for NFL Week 18, the last week of the regular season.
Everybody loves a good clown, and now it's time to meet the NFL's Clown of the Week for this week. And this week, the Clown of the Week in the NFL is quarterback Bailey Zappi, who played for the Cleveland Browns during this game, but who knows who he's going to play for next? Probably somebody else. He sucks. And speaking of Bailey Zappi sucking, my goodness, this game. I'm sure you've seen this on a highlight reel somewhere, and it was not exactly a highlight, more of a low light, and a clown-worthy one at that, may I add. So Bailey Zappi, when you are diagnosing coverage, and you not throw it to anywhere except for a 350-pound tackle that is lined up in coverage? Are you kidding me? The guy could barely run. When he caught that, he took a knee. The guy cannot move. Bailey Zappi, what are you doing? You think he might have been the heaviest player to ever catch an interception? This is absolutely ridiculous. That is so clown-worthy. Bailey Zappi, what are you doing? Like, you could not have found absolutely anywhere else to throw that? Just right to the nose tackle standing right in the open. So good for you, Michael Pierce. But for Bailey Zappi, you are the Clown of the Week.
All right, and from there, we're going to go on to our game picks for the wild card weekend. But before that, I'm going to have to issue a congratulations to my good friend Scott, who this year took home the Pigskin Pick'em crown, correctly predicting 177 games on the season. I came in behind him with a score of 171, so congratulations to you, Scott. Let's see if we can keep it going here in the wild card round. And we start off the wild card round with a game between the Los Angeles Chargers and the Houston Texans. Scott, the Texans were your preseason Super Bowl representative in the AFC, but they're underdogs at home this week against the Chargers. Are you sticking with your preseason pick, the Texans, or are you going to pick the Chargers here?
I would pick in the Chargers in this one.
And I'll also take the Chargers here.
Yeah, for the Texans have just come into the playoffs just on fumes. They wrapped up their division a few weeks ago, although pretty weakly, and then just seemed to have just petered right out after that.
Yep, completely agree with that. Really all season, though, I really haven't been impressed by the Texans. I think this was a team that we all really wanted to be better than they actually were, and it was kind of disappointing. Obviously Diggs going down early in the season, really hated to see that, but really their offensive line really didn't improve at all from last season, and although the defense is good, I just really don't trust them that much to do much of anything here. And for the Chargers, it's kind of the opposite. This is a team they only won 5 games last season with Brandon Staley. They got rid of a lot of their key playmakers. And so for me, this is a win-win for the Chargers. I mean, obviously they wouldn't want to lose, but it's kind of just a shock that they're even in the playoffs at all for a lot of people. Not for me, but I think the Chargers in this game, they're playing with a lot less pressure than the Texans. And so I think they're going to come in there loose and get a good win.
Yeah, and the Chargers, actually coming in pretty hot offensively. They've scored 34 or more points the last 3 weeks. And then on the other hand, the Texans, they've not scored more than 23 since week 12.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the testament to the Chargers offense still being able to produce despite getting rid of a lot of like Keenan Allen, who is still a good receiver, Mike Williams, who is a good receiver when he's healthy, and Austin Eckler. I think very good job by that coaching staff, Jim Harbaugh, who I know you're not the biggest fan of, but man, he just really seems to get the best out of his teams. And I do like this Chargers team going forward in this playoffs, even though, they're not the most talented out of other teams in the playoffs. I think they really feel like they have a shot in every game. And I guess there is a little bit of pressure for Justin Herbert, who is still looking for his first playoff win. Last time he was in the playoffs, he gave up that huge lead to Lawrence. So I think Herbert is a great quarterback who unfortunately has been a part of a lot of lackluster teams, and I really would like to see him get his first playoff win here.
Speaking of Herbert, he's grown on me this year, like watching some of his clips on the sideline in the locker rooms. Like he's a funny personality. He has grown on me a little bit. And not
yes,
completely tying Justin Herbert to a pole the entire year.
Yes, I think he really wanted to start the year off like establishing like, okay, this is our identity, this is my team, this is how we're going to do things. And then as the year kind of went on, you saw Justin Herbert kind of get into his own more. I think this is going to be a really, really good team next year. I think they're going to be a very good team contending for the division, I expect. This year is definitely a building year, but still a very fun team to watch. And I love Harbaugh and Herbert. I think they roll in this one, and I'll be happy to see him do it.
Yep.
And from there, we go on to another AFC matchup between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens almost double-digit favorites in this one. Do you think they get the win?
I do think they get the win, but I think it may be closer than that. I know they were able to cover this a couple weeks ago, but games between these two teams have been historically close.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the Steelers will cover this one, but I do like the Ravens here to get the win. I know I messaged you for this episode when I saw that Steelers had the Ravens in the first round. Every bone in my body wants to pick the Steelers. I'm not going to lie to you right now. And even now, as I say the Ravens, I'm considering changing it, but I just can't. And with the Steelers, to me, what I look at is what they've done these last 4 weeks, facing all the teams, like I said, that it was like, okay, this is your time to prove yourself to the doubters, and they lost every game that was meaningful. And so,
convincingly, too.
Convincingly, exactly. And now it's to the point where Tomlin's entertaining starting Justin Fields in this one or utilizing him in a very significant role. So to me, it's like, okay, it's over. You're done.
I mean, and comparatively to the last game, too, like Pittsburgh has not scored more than 17 points in the last 4 weeks. And on the other hand, Baltimore has scored more than 30 their last 4 weeks. So, like, same as the last game, like, you're seeing teams come in on completely two different, like, momentum sides here.
Yeah, completely. And the Steelers, I know this is their team that you have despised over the course of the last few years, because a lot of the times they're a team that we would, without Tomlin, they probably win 6 or 7 games. But he's able to kind of drag them into the playoffs, and in the wild card round, they're usually like one of the bottom seeds facing one of the best teams in the AFC, and they just get walloped. And the last few playoff games they've had, that's been the case. Unfortunately, I think that trend might continue. I don't know if it'll be a walloping, but I really don't see him having any shot to win this game, to be perfectly honest with you. I know Lamar Jackson has struggled against the Steelers typically in his career, but he didn't struggle against them last time, and I think he'll continue to improve on his record against Pittsburgh here.
Yeah.
And from there, we go to the final AFC game between the Buffalo Bills and the Denver Broncos. Who do you think wins in this matchup?
All the Bills winning this one.
I'm also going to take the Bills here.
Yeah, so when it came to the Bills, I think that they got one of the opponents that are probably a little better for them. I think as a Bills fan, we definitely didn't want to see Cincinnati, because they were the one team, like, if I'm talking about, like, I brought up over and over again that I think the defense is the weak point of this team. And if there's one team that was going to take you out in the wild card because of that, would have been Cincinnati. So Denver, Bo Nix has had a very good rookie season. When you compare the metrics of Denver's offense to that of last year, it is very similar. Really, where you're seeing the biggest differences is they went from one of the worst defenses to one of the best. and that's really what propelled them into the playoffs here. So when I'm talking about Denver as a playoff team, like, they're fine. Like, I'm not saying they don't deserve to be here, but I think they're a pretty significant step below Buffalo and the majority of the teams in the playoff picture.
I would have to agree with that. I really wanted Cincinnati to get in because I thought it would have made it a lot more interesting. I thought, if this is Buffalo-Cincinnati, this is a very interesting game that'll probably be very high scoring. But as it is now, this is a classic Buffalo. I think we're going to get an old Buffalo classic, right? Like the Steelers, they usually come in as a low seed facing one of the better teams and they get crushed. Buffalo usually comes in as a high seed facing a low seed and mollywops whoever they're going to play. So I don't expect this to be any different. Bo Nix, this is his first playoff start, and though that anyone's playoff start is not usually good. Josh Allen didn't have a good playoff start, and Lamar Jackson has yet to have a good playoff start until the last year. So it takes a while to get acclimated to that playoff culture of football. So I don't expect Bo Nix to be the quarterback he's been throughout the season. The Bills are going to be ready for this one, having rested their starters. So yeah, Bills all the way here.
Yeah, I expect to see they're going to see some fun things from this Bills offense. I think they definitely have the tendency to try and bring out a trick player too with some fun things here. I think they're going to put on a good show for the fans at Highmark Stadium this weekend.
Yes, I hope they do that too. Bills team has been great this year. Yeah, I'd love to see them do that, but I really don't think they need to. I think this could be a game that's over by the end of the third quarter, which would be a great thing for Buffalo, that they could maybe kind of ease up at the end of this game. I really do think it'll be that much of a blowout. I really do. I'm not giving Denver a big chance in this one.
Yeah. And like for Denver, I think a lot of this was like their win was getting into the playoffs. I think like nobody expected them to be here, like really, and they were really not expected to do a whole lot more. Like getting here was really big for them.
Yes, completely agree. Sean Payton has done a great job too. I mean, that Russell Wilson contract was one of the worst contracts ever, and Denver's still paying the price for it. And yet, Sean Payton's been able to conjure up some exciting plays and making this offense look pretty exciting. And credit, to that defense too, who had looked really, really bad last year, but has improved greatly. So Broncos I really like them going forward. I think they've successfully kind of revived that franchise from its seemingly bleak future. But yeah, so a successful season for the Broncos. No matter what happens in this game, you got to feel good if you're a Broncos fan. Looks like you got your quarterback, and you definitely got your coach. So I would, no matter what happens, if you're a Broncos fan, you got to be pretty happy with how the season's gone.
Yes, for sure.
And now on to the NFC side of things. We got a matchup between the Green Bay Packers taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. And who do you think takes this one?
The Eagles winning this one?
I'm going to take the Eagles here as well.
Yeah, as much as that pains me.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been prepping this whole way down the stretch that I was going to take the Packers far in my bracket, but
yeah,
I think just common sense just wins out here, that we've seen what they've done versus the good teams. We've seen the injuries that happened in Week 18. We've seen how the offenses seem to disintegrate down the stretch, and it almost seems like LaFleur has lost trust and love. And that was one of the things for me about this team, that I thought their offense was really explosive, and they haven't shown that the last few games. And it's not something I think is going to be able to be brought out on a good Philadelphia defense.
Yes, unfortunately, I have to agree with you on all of those points. The Packers team, the regular season really couldn't have ended any worse for you. Just the way that you lost to the Vikings, and then the week after coming out, you wanted to really have a great week, and then you're, two of your best offensive playmakers going down, and then you lose, and then you get a really tough draw, dropping to the 7th seed, playing the Eagles, who are just a fantastic team this season. It's really unfortunate to see how this season, the end of it, has unfolded for Green Bay. But I will say it really looks like, Philadelphia's going to roll in this one. But last season, nobody gave the Packers a shot against the Cowboys. Nobody. The Packers entered the playoffs as a 7 seed at 9-8, and the Cowboys were a great team that season. Nobody gave them a shot, and they just destroyed Dallas. So anything could happen. I'm not saying the Packers are going to win, but who knows? Maybe they shock some people. I certainly hope that's the case. But I'm going to stick with Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, they're not getting too horribly a spread. I mean, 4.5 is not a massive spread. Vegas is keeping it somewhat in the vicinity there. I mean, they're both teams. They're good teams. Like Green Bay is a good team. Like, which is sad about them that they've had such a good record. They're top 8, and both teams are top 8 in both points for and points against. Like, you really should be looking at it being a good battle. And but just because of how it's ended for the Packers as of late, we're just taking in such lower expectations and have such worse vibes about this team than we could have or maybe should have for teams at this record playing.
Yeah, the vibes aren't great. Not going to lie. I mean, there's some teams here that have great vibes. The Ravens trending in the right direction with that win. And you mentioned in the Clown of the Week with Zappe and, with throwing that interception. But for the Ravens, that was a great moment. Watching that game, it just put a smile on my face. Like, the Ravens have great vibes. The Bills have great vibes as well, with Josh Allen probably going to win the MVP. People in Buffalo are very excited for that. Packers had good vibes, and I felt like the vibes were super high after that Saints win. But, the last couple of weeks just have plummeted down. Eagles, though, like, I know we all hated that move. At least I hated it, by Sirianni to decide to bench Saquon and not let him go for the record. But objectively, it was the better move. It was the right decision for the team. Now Saquon's going to be rested, and I think he's going to shred this defense, unfortunately. Last time these two teams faced in week 1 in Brazil, the Eagles had 3 turnovers. Packers only had 1. So the Packers won the turnover battle by 2, and they still lost. So, yeah, Eagles are just a cut above Green Bay, I think. Green Bay certainly is not in the top tier of contenders. I think they're still a year away from being that. So, yeah, this is Philadelphia's game to lose. I'm not saying they couldn't lose it. I'm not a big fan of Sirianni, and I'm really not a big fan of Hurts either, to be honest. But it's Philly's game to lose for sure.
Yeah.
And from there, we go on to what should be a really fun matchup. This is probably one of my favorite ones of the week, between two really exciting teams, the Washington Commanders and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, two teams that neither of us had in the playoffs in our preseason picks. And who do you think will take this one?
I'm going to have the Commanders winning this game.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I thought you might go there. I considered it myself, but I'm going to go with my guy Baker and the Buccaneers.
Yeah, this is probably the game I struggled with the most in the wild card, flip-flopping back and forth on. And I think this is probably going to be the closest one of all the games. I think it's really going to come down to a last-second field goal here, and I end up just setting up for the Commanders. When I think of Tampa Bay, I think one of the things that's held them back most this year has been their pass defense, and for the Commanders, that's something that's been their biggest strength. Like, when you're able to see Jane Daniels really slinging around the field and being a hit guys like Terry McLaurin for big yardage situations. And just the way this game has played out for Commanders, the situation that they've been set up for, I do like them in this game. Tampa Bay did falter a little bit in the last few weeks. They did lose to Dallas just a few weeks ago, and after blowing out Carolina, it looked like they were really struggling with the Saints and being like, oh man, are they really going to blow this and miss the playoffs? They ended up being able to right the ship by the end of the game, but not carrying the strongest of end of season into the playoffs either.
Yes, this is definitely going to be a game the Commanders are going to bring everything, because in week 1, in Jaden Daniels' first ever regular season start, the Buccaneers destroyed them. Baker Mayfield had an 80% completion percentage, 146 passer rating, almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just destroyed them. So don't think that the Commanders haven't forgotten about that. They definitely are going to be thinking about that going into this game. But ultimately, what was the decision here is the quarterbacks for me. Baker has consistently been a good playoff QB. He looked pretty darn good in that second half of the Saints game. As bad as the team looked in the first half, he really brought it on and brought this team to a win. And the Buccaneers, they're a very hot and cold team, so they could definitely lose this game. Not saying that they couldn't. They seem to have the ability to beat any team or lose to any team in any given week. So this was also a very tough one for me to pick. But it ultimately comes down to, I've never seen Jaden Daniels play in the playoffs before, and like I said before, it's just guys that are playing their first playoff start ever. It's a little bit hard for me to trust him. I know what I've seen Baker in the playoffs. I know he's going to have a solid game. So I'm going to put my money on the sure bet here with Tampa Bay.
Fair enough.
And to conclude the wild card weekend, we have a matchup between the Minnesota Vikings and the Los Angeles Rams. wildfires in California may force this game to be played in Arizona, which could be a little bit of a disadvantage there for the Rams, although it'll still be closer to LA, of course. With that in mind, who do you have in this game?
Oh, the Vikings winning this one.
I'm going to take my Rams here. Not a surprise.
I
as I'm
thought
sure
you might.
you know.
Yeah. All right, so diving into this game, I've been it took me a long time, but I think I've finally came aboard to the Vikings train a little bit this season. They boast both a top 10 offense and defense. I think that they've proven that they've had a really good fit for Sam Darnold, and he's been able to do pretty great things, like other than minus last week versus the Lions, which might concern you a little bit, was probably Darnold's worst game of the season. And their defense has just been incredible this year. The Vikings, they're able to show really awesome things and completely change the looks that you were seeing. And then on the other side for the Rams, they are bottom half in the league in both points for and points against. They have been able to string together some wins, but has not been in a particularly dominant fashion.
So for me, this comes down to the playoff experience here. And I picked the Vikings. I think the Vikings are an exceptional team. They've definitely been the better team this season, and Sam Darnold has been the better quarterback over Matt Stafford this season. Undoubtedly, he's had a fantastic year. I applaud him and what he's been able to do. But the Vikings really didn't have any pressure at all this season. We both thought they would be an absolutely terrible team. I mean, they were playing the freest you could ever play. And the one game where it actually matters, the one game where you have pressure on you, the game that you could win against a Lions team that half their defensive starters are out, that you have all the momentum conquering the Packers, that the Lions are coming off a short week playing on Monday night, and you put up a 55 passer rating, a 43% completion percentage, and 166 yards. That is just pathetic. I picked the Vikings to win that game, and I was very sure of that. And then I watched this game, and I see them absolutely just crumble in the red zone time after time. And I saw Sam Darnold look like he was seeing ghosts out there. And to me, that just was like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can trust this guy in big spots. And to me, that's the difference. The Rams, I know I can trust. They've won a Super Bowl with this coach, with this quarterback. And to me, I don't think the Rams are a Super Bowl caliber team, but I think they just have the more experienced squad. They've rested their starters. They rested them last week, whereas the Vikings are coming off a shellacking by one of the most physically dominant teams in the Lions. Teams after facing the Lions, I do not have a great record this season. And the Vikings, I just worry about how they're going to be mentally after that game, because couldn't have been an easy game to lose against the Lions. I'm really liking the Rams vibes way more. I'm going to take them, even though I do think they are the inferior team with talent-wise. I think clearly they are the more prepared team going into this week.
I mean, you got to stick with your guys, I guess. But for me, I think I'm taking a little opposite perspective to you. I mean, you're taking the historically more experienced team, and that I think for me, I've seen Sam Darnold be able to do this over and over again. Like, absolutely, it was an awful showing last week, but I think I've seen him do it enough this year that I'm confident they can bounce back and do it again. And whereas the Rams, like, obviously we've seen Matt Stafford do it a lot, but we have not seen as much this year. So I guess I'll go with what I've seen more of this season.
Yes. I mean, it's unfortunate, too, because I really like the Vikings. I really thought they were going to win that game, get that 1 seed, and I thought they'd go to the Super Bowl. So I do think they're the more talented team than the Rams, but I really don't see any way that they're going to beat the Rams this week. I think the Rams are just a very good team. I think they've been playing their cards wisely, doing just enough to get into the playoffs, and I think they're going to be well-rested and very hungry to finally start going all out and showing everyone who they really are.
Yeah, I think it should definitely make for a fun one. It was certainly a fun one back in Week 8 when these two teams faced.
Yes. All right, and from there, we're going to go on to our against the spread picks of the week. And guys, not going to lie, been a little bit rough in these against spread picks. I've gotten the last 4 incorrect. Scott got his last one wrong, picking the Chiefs last week. He's sitting at 8-10. I'm at 11-7. But it's the playoffs now. We're going to forget about our struggles in the regular season. Going in fresh in the playoffs. Who do you got against the spread pick this week?
This one I'm so confident in. This is one of my most confident picks of the year. I'm going to be taking the Los Angeles Chargers -2.5. Chargers on the road being favored. I think it could have been even more than this. I think that they could really handle the Texans and they can do it in dominant fashion. I think this could be definitely a double-digit win easily for this Chargers team. So taking them at -2.5 is a great number for me. So I'll be taking the Chargers.
I like that pick very much. I like this one that I'm going to pick even more. I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills -8.5 at home against Denver. Like I said before, this is going to be a Bills classic. This is going to be a game. I think it's going to be over by the third quarter, possibly even earlier. Josh Allen is going to absolutely dominate this Broncos defense, which has been very good this season. But the Broncos are just not prepared for a team like the Bills. The Bills are, I think, the third best team in the NFL this season, second only to the 2-1 seeds. And I expect them to showcase their dominance, destroying the Broncos. Take the Bills -8.5 here.
Very nice.
And from there, we're now going to go on to our playoff brackets for the NFL 2024-2025 season. So in this segment, we're going to go through the entire bracket, all rounds of the playoffs, predicting our winners in each round, and at the end of it, our Super Bowl winners for the season. Scott, why don't you kick it off with your bracket?
Okay. So in the wildcard round, I'll have Chargers over Texans, Ravens over Steelers, Bills over Broncos, Vikings over the Rams, Commanders over the Buccaneers, and Eagles over the Packers. Then in the divisional, I'll have the Chiefs winning over the Chargers, Bills over the Ravens, Lions over the Commanders, and Vikings over the Eagles. Then in the championship games, I'll have Bills over Chiefs and Lions over the Vikings. And finally, I'll be having the Detroit Lions as my Super Bowl champions over the Buffalo Bills.
Oh, wow. Okay. So some stocking stuff there at the end. For me, I'm going to go with the Chargers over the Texans in the wildcard round, the Ravens over the Steelers, Bills over the Broncos. Then in the NFC, I'm going to have the Rams over the Vikings, Buccaneers over the Commanders, and Eagles over the Packers. From there into the divisional round, I'm going to take the Chiefs over the Chargers, the Bills over the Ravens, and the Lions defeating the Rams. Man, I would have loved for that not to be a matchup. Then I'm going to take the Eagles over the Buccaneers. In the conference championship, I'm going to take the Chiefs over the Bills and the Lions over the Eagles. And in the Super Bowl, of course, I'm going to take the Chiefs over the Lions, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, was my preseason pick, and for the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl.
Yes, sir. I mean, again, I stick with you guys. Stick with your picks. You did it last year. We'll see if it'll pay off for you again this year.
Yes, and I was looking for a team like the Browns of last season or the Chargers the year before to go rogue and go way too far, but I decided, you know what? That doesn't work. That does not work. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to pick who I actually believe in. And for me, it's the Chiefs and the Lions. All right, from there, we're going to go on to Scott's Parlay of the Week. It is playoff time, so it's time to get your wallets out and start betting big. Scott, I know you got something good cooking up. What do you got for the wild card weekend?
Yes, so as we get into the playoffs, the selection pool certainly gets a lot smaller. So you're looking to find the right balance between value and confidence in your picks. And I think I struck exactly that this week. So, first of all, we're going to be taking the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Texans at -154. I think that is a pretty good number for them. But likewise with the spread, I think that is definitely a good number for the amount of confidence I have in that team. I'll also be taking the Eagles in this parlay. I've got them at -240. They're the biggest leg I've got in this parlay versus the Packers. And for me, I needed another team that I was really confident they were going to take a win. So for me, that is Philadelphia. And finally, I'm going to be taking the Vikings at -122. They're the smallest one in this. And when you're looking for value, I think they were the team that stepped out the most to me, while also being a team that I was definitely confident is going to win this as well. So this week, bet on the money line, Los Angeles Chargers, Philadelphia Eagles, Minnesota Vikings.
All right, you had me until the end. I think it's going to be a 2-1 weekend for you on that parlay. But nonetheless, if you like what Scott's got cooking up, like his train of thought, put your money on that parlay. historically been a very good winner and bringing in a lot of good money for you guys. All right, that concludes this episode for this week. This is the time we've all been waiting for. This is what it all comes down to. All these teams have worked so hard to get into this spot. It's the NFL playoffs. It's Wild Card Weekend. We got 6 amazing matchups. Can't wait to watch all of them in their entirety. Jumping with joy right now. It's going to be a great playoff weekend. We hope you enjoy it just as much as we certainly will. And this has been Mark My Words Football Podcast with Rob
and Scott.
And we are tuning